Praise the Lord, guys. I'm Straw Greenhorn. And as you would that men shall do unto you, do you likewise also unto them. For if you love those that love you, what thanks have ye? For even sinners love those that love them. And if you do good to those that do good to you, what thanks have ye? For even sinners do likewise. And if you lend unto others, hoping to receive yet again, what thanks have ye? For even sinners lend unto other sinners, hoping to receive as much again. So I say unto you, love your enemies, do good and lend, hoping for nothing again. So shall your reward be great, and you shall be called the children of the highest. For he is kind unto the even unto the unthankful and evil. So a continuation of these one-liners of wisdom. We picked up yesterday where we saw him giving, some, parables, but shortened, like one verses of just observations of, from his seat where he sits. That the viewpoint is very, important. If you understand in the military, we have the troops on the ground, and we have, those the surveillance team that flies overhead. You might have satellite, coverage, and the higher, the ranking general and stuff like that, they see more or as much as they can. So him being God, sitting from this seat, the viewpoint that he has, right, with his experience and wisdom. So he's giving us, things to go by. How if we walk by these things, life will be good for us. And we understand that, these right here, these ones, is kind of a, do to others as you would have them do unto you. We know that when the scribe came unto him, he said, in the master, what is the greatest commandment of all? Jesus said, the first commandment of all is, hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one Lord. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind, with all thy strength. And the second is like unto it, love thy neighbor as thyself. So I know we know this saying, love thy neighbor as thyself. But, we've never, I think, been, diving deep enough into this to appreciate it for what it means. Love thy neighbor as thyself. It incorporates so many things and it's so far reaching that even some of the things we don't realize, that it means. Because to love thy neighbor as thyself, right? A more wise way to put this saying, would say be something like, the things that you complain against, make sure you're not doing these things to others, right? The things that you complain against, make sure that you are not doing these things to others. Because I think that, in the moment when this is presented onto people, their mind, it doesn't reach, far enough. And there's many psychological, programs running in the background that interfere correct, interpretation, or explanation of this, saying. First of all, we know in psychology there's the will, to be, first in the universe. Understand that each one of us is walking around with this, program, trying to be first, number one. That's why, if you go out and you buy something, you more likely get the better version for yourself. But if you're gonna buy something for someone else, you might get a lesser one, or even the same. Depending on how you are, it's the same reason why you feel bad when you don't get chosen, left out. Understand that we have this drive. It's what causes us to usurp authority. I heard a bunch of guys talking one time, and they were talking about life in general, and one of them said, how many soldiers have disobeyed orders from generals? How many times has a general told a soldier to do something and he doesn't do it? It's because of this, programming, who can tell me what to do? So that's one of the things that interrupt, this thing, because, from this program, we don't understand that we can cause harm to others. It's not in us to realize this thing. Plus we have so many blind spots. The thing that you assume about people is that they're fully in tune with reality. No one walks by a person even attempting to detect, the mental things that might be going on inside their mind, how skewed their, point of view of reality might be, how they might interpret things differently, how they might be living in the past. They might be stuck at a certain developmental stage in life. And, you walk past people and you assume that everybody is, up and running as they should be. When so many people walk around, with fragmented, pieces of themselves and of reality. So there's a lot that gets in the way of the correct interpretation, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Love thy neighbor, as thyself. So we see the topic of love being, addressed, right? And what is love? Love is being mindful of a person at all points in time and, wanting to bring no harm to them. Love, if you think about it, it's not just having, romantic feelings. I would say love is being able to be mindful of a person, when you're not in their presence. Being, careful how, you speak of them. Being very careful of what you, send towards them. I would say love, is not just material things, giving them things. But, love is being conscious of their development. and their existence on a whole. If you're aware of the concept of object permanence, that's when a baby that they have a continuous realization of the existence of something or someone, some object. And if you ever seen a baby cry for something, they try to hide it from him and give him something else to distract him. Sooner or later, he forgets that it exists. But with love, object permanence that comes with love. Because if you ever, love someone, whether that was returned or not, you thought about them, at all times, even out of their presence, right? So love is being aware of someone, not wanting to do anything to harm, their development or their progress or their identity or existence, wanting to keep them from harm. If something that would appear to be beneficiary is before their face, but that secretly is going to be malicious, that you would attempt to protect them. Now the Bible assumes that we love ourselves, because there's a scripture that says, which man having hated his own flesh, I believe it was, love thy wife as thine own body, right? Because it assumes that we love ourselves, because you're with yourself. There's never been a time in your life when you were not with yourself, so you're always mindful of your own. When you're hungry, you eat. When you're tired, you sleep. So to love thy neighbor, as thyself, as the first one, it's keeping all these things in mind. It requires vision, right? Maturity. You can't be, incomplete. You can't lack vision. Because if you think about it, a parent that has like a baby that's just creeping, just learning to walk, they gotta watch them everywhere they go, right? They gotta always be mindful of this child. There can't be a moment where the child is not in view. That's love, right? Being consciously mindful continuously. It also says, doing unto others, which also goes with love. Now, in this sense, the doing is considered positive if you, read behind the context of what's being said. Doing unto others, that only do unto you. So, this, implies also maturity. I believe that this love thing, these that are being mentioned, it requires such vision and understanding, right? Detectives that are working a case, they might sometimes ask for outside help. Why? Because they get tunnel vision, right? They might know the area, the neighborhood, they might know the people. And because they do, they, overlook and they miss many, stimuli, many things that are there. Because, they've been there so long, they learn to tune these things out. So, a second, fresher eyes, a stranger might be invited to help give an extra hand. And this is what they bring to the table, in that they're not used to these things, so they're able to see everything as it is. They haven't started, it's called accommodation. It's the same reason why I heard a video today on the internet. When you turn your AC on, you hear it, right? But then after a couple minutes, it's on, but you don't hear it anymore, even though it's still there. So if you do only to those that do to you, and that's kind of what we focus in on, and that's why it's being cautioned against. Because this is the thing that you're not overlooking, but you're gonna overlook everybody else that's not doing unto you, right? So they are the ones that get tuned out. So in order for you to be aware of their existence, that's maturity, that's insight. They're there because your natural tendency is to tune them out. I think that a lot of the things that we learn in self-help is reversing or challenging the natural disposition that the human mind it comes to, just because of how it is. Finding these, subconscious, unconscious processes and being able to take a conscious command and control of these things. We see lending also being meant that, if you lend, unto those of whom you hope to receive again, which is kind of like doing, right? But, I learned in psychology that we make bids. What are bids? If you're interested in something, then you bid on it, right? You bid for attention. You might say something to a friend, to a parent, to a family member, a colleague, and you're bidding for their attention. You want, to vibe with them. You want them to give you an answer. You want them to invest time and energy into you. So now this is being said with the understanding that we know that there are some that are lesser, right? There are some that, if you give, they won't be able to give back. And then, what's the benefit in that for you, right? And then this, I guess, really boils down to the kind of person you are, right? Different people, they have different tendencies. They have different hearts. If you understand the concept of probability, if you flip a coin 10 times, you're expected to get some heads, some tails, or you might have a little more heads than more tails, or more tails than heads. Some people, they're going to be so kind. Some people are going to be more, restraining with their resources. We have different personalities, different worldviews, different skills. I believe that we have the same wiring or close enough to the same wiring. It might even be different in the brain, but the pathways that get, activated. One child, when they were little, they had such good moments, ice cream and pizza, whereas another child, something terrible happened. They got chased by a dog, and that just, traumatized them. Another one, they grew up, getting exposed to certain things at a young age, money, sports, art, numbers, shapes, education, singing. So, we form different, different, things get activated. I know these things that get activated, right? They take on a life of their own. We observe others around us, how they treat people. Now we can, in these moments, we're forced to make a choice. We can, agree or we can disagree. If you agree, that's going to lead you one way. If you disagree, that's going to lead you another. So lending, unto others that whom you hope to receive again. So we understand that in this moment, right, that you can have one person that is more balanced. They don't, they're not too quick to narrow in. And I think that that's what it really comes down to, narrowing in on certain people and then disregarding the rest. If one were eating, this would be the person that, just eats the chicken and maybe the potatoes. They don't touch the vegetables, right? Because if you understand that these are more for, nutrition, and they might not be as tasty as the chicken and the ice cream, right? So in life, people, they develop, certain, certain tendencies where some, they will, eat the whole meal with the vegetables, everything. But then you have others that they only want the pizza and the chicken and the ice cream. And it's the same, in this thing. And, lending on to others, the maturity, conceptualization. I mean, so many things, come together in this moment. And like I said, they're each going to be different in each of us. And they might fire the pathway differently. Two guys can own the same car. One guy, he believes he's a daredevil. He changes tires every 2 months. He has to change tires. But the next guy, he can have the same car, but he's more of a slow driver. He's more careful. His tires last him, 6, 8 months or whatever, tires can last. So we can even have the same exact, thing. But I mean, so many different things goes into, these things. All right, so how did we end up here? Still in the 6th chapter of Luke, where we just saw Jesus go up to pray. Then he chose the disciples, and they came unto him, to be healed and to hear him. He cast out some devils, they pressed upon him to touch him. Then he lifted up his eyes and beheld the disciples. He said, Blessed are ye poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are ye which hunger, for ye shall be filled. Blessed are ye that weep, for ye shall laugh. Blessed are ye when men shall hate you, and separate you from their company, and reproach you, and cast your name out as evil for the Son of Man's sake. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for great is your reward in heaven. For in like manner their fathers persecuted the prophets which were before them. But woe unto you, rich men, for ye have received your consolation. Woe unto you that laugh, for you shall weep and mourn. Woe unto you that are filled, for you shall hunger. Woe unto you when all men shall speak well of you. For in like manner their fathers did to the false prophets. But unto you that hear, I say unto you, love your enemies, and do good to them that hate you. Bless them that curse you, and pray for them which despitefully use you. To him that smiteth you on the one cheek, turn to him the other also. Him that taketh away thy cloak, forbid not to take thy coat also. Give unto all men that ask of thee. And of him that taketh away thy goods, ask them not again. So then we pick up right here where it says, And as ye would that men shall do unto you, do ye likewise unto them. So we have this introduction of, treating others how you would like to be treated, right? So, we understand that, that we have different tendencies, right? For the person with the good heart, you don't need to really get on them about this. But for the person that's missing this, this is more useful for them. Because, as little children, it depends on how we were brought up. A only child, they might have, more confidence. They might have, trouble sharing because they never had to share with a sibling, right? But a child that has a lot of siblings, they learn that they had to even share clothes. They had to share rooms, beds. Worse if that family, they were poor. So, upbringing is also, a part of this. You might have a disadvantage or advantage depending on the size family you grew up with, right? Even how your parents treated you, if they were kind, encouraging, if they taught you good things, if they were, more involved in your shaping of how you perceive the world and people. So, you have people that can be walking around, having not learned these lessons, right? I saw a video on the internet where this little child, there was two brothers. The smaller one, he took, there was like a plastic, baseball bat, soft one, not the heavy, big ones, and he hit his older brother, and then the older brother, he took it back and he hit him, and he started crying. So now in this moment, you can understand that, he's being, forming right now, this concept of doing unto others, as they would do unto you, right? Because, being so young and so small, he's fresh, right? And he's learning that, if I do certain things, then it's going to be done right to me. And, this is a life hard lesson, right? Sometimes, it's easier to show a person something than to tell them. Because you can tell a person all day something, and until they have to look it in the face and bear the consequences, they won't receive it. So, if you look at language that's used, kind of graceful, I would say it's a very graceful, way to put it. As ye would that men do unto you. So now, what comes to mind for me is how is hope, right? I see hope in this statement. Because when you lift up your eyes, right, you're looking for love, right? You're looking for humanity. You're looking to be nurtured and taken care of. There's a saying that the rich man, he lifted up his eyes in hell. You're not looking to lift up your eyes in anything bad, right? So as you would that men do unto you. I see a person lifting up their eyes, right? Looking to receive, looking to be nurtured, looking to be loved. Do ye likewise. As you lift up your eyes right now, looking to receive, you have to be willing to do the same for others. And for a person that has an advantage over another, where they're able to get, by and get away with doing unto others without it being done to them. This is, really bad reinforcement, for them. And, what they're getting away with in that moment, it feels good to have power over another. But what they're getting away with, it does hurt later, right? Because, you become like this, right? Hopefully not too much. Then you get your spouse. How are you gonna treat your spouse if you're used to, getting over and on others, right? You can end up with a resentful spouse, person. You can, pass this on your kids and give them such a huge, disservice and disadvantage. So, it does hurt later, right? So as you would that men shall do unto you, do, ye likewise, which, implies that you have to lead with this thing. A lot, like I said, a lot of these things, they are full circle maturity, reasoning, aware people do these things. If you're the person that your heart, it just allows you to do these things naturally. But for me, and I think, for a lot of people, this comes from, awareness and understanding, reflecting, on life and see how things are connected. This implies a leading. You have to lead. You have to start. You have to give what you want to get. My own personal quote, I like to say, we are our own, parents' children, which means that, your parents look out for you, right? You're hungry, they feed you, they, pay the bills, they take care of you, they drive you to school. If anything is wrong, they make it better. So now then we go and we take this, right? And we walk out into the world with this still on us. And we unknowingly view others as this. Because, our parents, they came and gave us love first, right? They led us, they provided for us, they took care of us. And if a person gets stuck in this, mindset or this way of being, then they're gonna be looking for others to do to them first, even take care of them, even carry them. So like I said, it implies you doing first, you leading. You have to start with what you want. And I know that a lot of us, we don't learn this lesson in life, right? All right, so the next verse says, "For if you love them which love you, what thanks have ye? For even sinners love those that love them." So now the word love, being brought up here. If you love those that love you, if you're only aware of those that are aware of you, what thanks have ye? If you notice, some people, they're able to be friends with a lot of people, but then others, they choose a smaller circle. To be able to connect with a lot of people, that requires a lot of, self-awareness. But then there's a kind of person also. It's not that they're self-aware. That's just their personality. They just are, extroverted, and they like a lot of people around them. But for where it counts, when you become an adult, later in life, because you should always be growing your mind, right, and your personality. And I said earlier about love being, conscious, object permanent. This object is permanent in my mind. I before I go to bed, I think of it. I wake up in the morning, I think of it. I'm aware that it's there at all times. It doesn't disappear and not exist and then, appear later. That doesn't mean that you have to always be thinking of this thing or person, but it's a more concrete, structure in, this person's mind. And I believe that's why they say that you can only find, maybe a couple of really true friends. In life, you'll only ever find a couple of true friends because, this kind of, love, right? You can't have this for a lot of people. You don't have the capacity, to have this for a lot of people. And that's another reason why also that those with a lot of friends that they, love more generally. But then, those with few friends that they love deeper, right? Because they focus more on you. You're not competing for their attention with anybody else. So to love is to be aware, to not wish harm, to encourage their growth and development and maturity, to encourage all the good things for them. And the hardest part of this is to say, with or without you in their life, that you're able to love this person even if they were to be taken from you, like, somehow, not by death, but be separated from this person, right? Even sinners love those that love them. Even sinners will say good things about those that say good things about them. It's returning the energy. All right, so we understand that this is being able to send energy where it's not being sent your way. If you love those that love you, if you love those that, also send energy your way, even sinners can do that. But growth and maturity, understanding. All right, so the next verse says, and if you do to those that do to you, thanks heavy, for even sinners do likewise. So we have to, assume that do in this case means something good, something positive, and not something evil or negative. You do to those that do to you, right? Or if you do for those, I guess you can also say, if you notice that the companies with the greatest economy, right? They don't just trade within themselves, right? They trade with other countries and even more countries than other countries trade with. Right, they're just friends with everybody trading. What would a country look like if they only traded with themselves? They didn't have anything, imported from nowhere else. Well, first of all, they would be lacking many things because there's certain things that you can't find in every country. Some countries are too cold, to grow certain fruits, even vegetables, right? How would you get these if you only trade? So no, we understand, there's a benefit to you also. Because if you do, only for those that and you're limited, to this only. So like I said, there's a great awareness, being, alluded to here and hinted, because of what I told you about the air conditioning. When you turn it on, it's gonna stop for a while, right? So now imagine, you're in your room for like 2 days straight and the AC is on. You're gonna completely not hear it, even though it's gonna be running. And the longer you're in your environment, right? And you form these habits and these neural pathways and connections, so you learn to see one thing and you learn to not see another. Just as well as you see one thing, you ignore another to the point where you don't even see it. There's a saying, I don't know how true it is, but it would serve as a good example in this case. They said that when Columbus was coming to take over, that the Indians, they were so used to seeing just their people and just their environment. They couldn't see the ships coming, because they had learned to tune out you know this kind of thing so much. I mean, I don't know how true that can be, but the example would serve as a good example here. All right, so the next one says, and if you lend to those of whom you hope to receive again, what thanks have ye? For even sinners lend to other sinners, hoping to receive as much again. So now here we have, instead of just doing, well, I would, admit and say that, to love and to do, the first two examples, right? Even those imply a return, because that's why you're doing it. You're doing it to get it back, right? To love and to be loved back, to do and then to receive again. Well, now here we have, an emphasis on the receiving part. We're doing this more, intentionally to receive. And, and this, more takes in the value of the other person, right? Because receiving, that implies that the person is able to give back. So they have to have a certain value, right? So I mean, if you value only those that are important or perceived important or status or wealthy, or if you look at a lot of these, school shootings, you would understand that this child, they were bullied, right? So we understand that in school like this, a social hierarchy is formed. We have the kids at the top, the cool kids, then we have the regular kids, then we have the kids at the bottom. So now the kids at the bottom, they have this low value. They're not perceived to have anything to give. So, we don't need to treat them right, okay? They can't give us anything back. As a matter of fact, we doing bad things unto them, it gives us, good things. Us doing bad things to them gives us good things. Because then, everybody gets to laugh, right? You get to form a joke. You get more, bonded with the kids at the top. The kids in the middle, they seek your approval more. And then the kids at the bottom, they suffer, right? So if you lend unto others, hoping to receive. So we know that, and in this, it kind of shows no generosity. Because you're getting it back, What's generosity if you know that you're getting this thing back? Generosity is to give, I believe, and to not receive again. So now we're more selective, right? Because if this person can't give unto me, why would I give unto them? The story of the Good Samaritan, the priest and the Levite, they walked past this man, right? Because he was, half naked, bruised and bloody. and no man could benefit from this man. If you touch him, he was gonna get blood on your clothes. You would probably have to take care of him. Spend money, waste your time. Who's gonna pay me back for helping this guy? So what thanks have ye? And if you notice, it keeps saying, what thanks have ye? Jesus, he said, you have your reward. When he was talking about the scribes and Pharisees, that when they fast, they appear unto men to fast, they disfigure their faces, and they walk about looking outside so that men could say, wow, he's fasting. So that's your reward. You receive no reward from God. But when you fast, wash your face, go in your prayer closet and pray unto God and fast unto him. And he sees in secret shall reward you open. So we understand, in all these three things, love, to do and to lend, what thanks have ye if they are giving you back? You're not owed anything. You lent, you gave unto this person, 500, they gave it back to you. There you have it. What more are you looking for? You're looking for the fact that you helped them, that you gave it unto them, but you got it back. You want to be paid more, you want to be overpaid. All right, so the last one says, but I say unto you, love your enemies, do good and lend, hoping for nothing again, and great shall be your reward, and ye shall be called the children of the highest. For God is kind, even the unthankful and the evil. So here's a summary of the three things: to love, to do for, and to lend unto, hoping for nothing again. Because now you're owed something. And we know that God, he's a rewarder of them who did diligently seek him. God is a rewarder. He said, if that which you give, I shall pay again. And God, he's a way better, payer than, man. The Bible says, if you give unto the poor, you lend unto God, and that which he giveth, he shall surely pay him again. So hoping for nothing again, and great shall be your reward. It shall be greater than what you give. Because we understand that why do we give hoping to not receive? Because we understand that and we believe there is God. The rich, the Bible says that the wicked say that there is no God. Right? And if you believe that there is no God, are you gonna do things hoping for his return? So this is faith, this is believing. This is one form of believing. Because why are you giving away your money, your time, your help, your resources to somebody who can't give you anything back? Why? Why are you doing these things? Because you believe that there is God and he will repay you. And you shall be called the children of the highest. And that's how he knows his children. For he is kind to the unthankful and evil. So we know that the Bible says that he makes the rain fall on the just and the unjust. He is kind even to the evil and the unthankful. I am Straw Greenhorn.